This slide comes from Acadia Center's Community Energy Vision report, which focused on the changes needed to advance strong, sustainable community energy systems. The Energy Vision series also includes Utility Vision, which provided additional detail for electricity sector reforms and opportunities needed at the utility levels. All told, the work sets out the pathway for ambitious, achievable advances in 4 key areas: energy efficiency, renewable power, electrification of buildings and transportation, and grid modernization that allow communities to take control of their energy systems and to reform the way energy is planned and managed. Today, we'll take about 30 minutes to walk through Acadia Center's latest report, the Community Energy Vision Action Guide. Kathleen will walk through the action guide, including its context, its components, and its potential uses for state and local action. Then we'll transition into a discussion of specific actions communities here in Connecticut can take to advance clean energy. We are very interested in your experiences, insights, and questions. And if you want to share those during the presentation, you can type them into the Q&A box. We'll tackle them and any other comments towards the end. Without further ado, let's jump in. Kathleen.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks everyone who's joining us today. Bill described Acadia Center's Energy Vision series, and as Acadia Center developed that work, it really became clear that communities are the place where the clean energy future happens. They can benefit from new energy technologies that offer unprecedented access to affordable, resilient local energy. And communities have great capacity to change behavior and to establish new energy norms. Unfortunately, as you well know, communities are also dependent on what state rules allow them to do. And those rules can vary widely across the 7 Northeast states. At Acadia Center, we believe that communities deserve the freedom to act. Acadia Center prepared the Community Energy Vision Action Guide to explore the changes needed to allow communities to fully benefit and participate in a sustainable, low-emissions energy system and to achieve a fully modernized energy vision. Those changes will need to align community energy opportunities with state laws and rules, and they need to modernize the outdated rules that are currently blocking community action. Achieving them will require community support. And that's where Acadia Center's Community Energy Vision Action Guide comes in. The Action Guide is designed to raise awareness of existing opportunities and obstacles to community energy action, and to be a user-friendly resource that's based on extensive research of the laws and regulations governing community energy in each of the Northeast states. By identifying the barriers to community energy, Acadia Center hopes the Action Guide will inspire advocacy for the changes needed to expand community energy options. So what kind of options and opportunities are we talking about? Acadia Center identified 4 categories of action that communities can take to shape their energy systems. Those include how buildings use energy, how energy is generated, delivered, and purchased, how zoning and siting can shape clean energy developments, and how residents, businesses, and municipalities pay for it all. The Action Guide includes a comprehensive list of almost 40 clean energy actions where communities could have a high degree of control. The Action Guide explores those actions with 3 interlinking sections. It starts with an overview of the 4 categories of action, includes a comparison of the availability of those actions across the Northeast states, and then for each state does a deeper dive into the specific rules and regulations governing those actions. Together, these sections will help you determine whether a given action is possible, limited, or prohibited under current state rules, and offer both the regional context and the state-specific considerations for moving forward. So how does it work? The action guide uses simple color coding to give you a clear sense of the status and the next steps for each community energy action. You start by picking a clean energy action and then ask a series of questions. Is the action covered under state policy? Has it been done before? Is it replicable? Is there a clear precedent? The answers will help you determine where each action stands under current state rules. And a traffic signal key identifies each action as green, yellow, or red. So green indicates that there are no structural barriers to action. Acadia Center identified actions as green when there was a clear legislative authorization or a clear precedent. These are the steps that every community in a given state could take, but these actions haven't necessarily been adopted in every community or even in any community. So the green actions are sort of a to-do list. Yellow indicates that there's a lack of clarity in the state rules and regulations. Acadia Center identified actions as yellow when there were limitations or considerations that could hinder community progress, or when there was no clear precedent for action. These are the steps that may be possible, but you really need to learn more, and communities may need to work for changes in state rules or laws. You can think about the yellow actions as a sort of research project. Red is a full stop. Acadia Center identified actions as red when they were clearly prohibited by state laws or rules. These are the steps that are not currently possible, but these are the areas that are ripe for reform. So the red lights could inspire communities to roll up your sleeves and engage in state-level advocacy. Now, when you first look at the matrix of actions across the 7 Northeast states, you may be first interested in the status of the actions in your state. But when you start comparing which actions are possible, limited, and prohibited across the region and see how states stack up on community energy opportunities, there'll be a few aha moments. First of all, no state stands out as entirely permissive or restrictive. There's not a column of red or green anywhere on this matrix. And the balance of red and green in each column may be a little surprising. States that are widely acknowledged as lagging in the uptake of clean energy actions don't necessarily lack community opportunities. It may be that communities are unaware of their options, or it may be that they're unsure how to take action towards those clean energy goals. You'll also note that fewer than a third of the actions Acadia Center researched and documented have the same status in all 7 states, and no action is prohibited across the board. So you don't see a row of red anywhere in the matrix. The bottom line is that communities have a variety of options under current law and plenty of opportunities to expand those options and to push for reform. We'll dig into a couple of actions in each of the categories here in Connecticut in just a moment. But first, are there any clarifying questions about the structure of the action guide itself?
Thanks, Kathleen. We can give it a moment to see if anyone has any questions. There'll be more time for questions at the end of the full presentation. All right, okay, we have one question. How did Acadia Center select the 37 different actions included?
That's a great question. Throughout the research effort, we worked with a variety of people, both inside and outside of our organization, and came up with a list of potential actions. And then we really dug in to see which actions were viable and led to meaningful change. we grouped them into these 4 categories, and we really tried to be comprehensive, but I'm sure there are other actions that will emerge over time.
Great, thanks, Kathleen.
Yeah.
No other questions right now. I think we can keep moving.
Great. So the action guide does provide that regional context and state-specific information for each of the community energy actions. We're going to take a look at 3 of them to get a sense of how it works. So let's start with the clean energy zoning and siting category. You'll see that one possible action is to require EV access in new developments. And the matrix shows that this action is permitted here in Connecticut, and it's also permitted in New York, but that it's limited throughout the rest of the region. So what does it mean to require EV access in new developments? The action guide explains that Acadia Center asked whether municipalities can adopt ordinances that support EV access. So by requiring a certain number of EV chargers in parking areas would be one way. And the green signal indicates that for communities here in Connecticut, the answer is yes. And the action guide lets you know that municipalities can leverage zoning regulations to encourage energy efficient patterns of development. And it links to the relevant statute and references Hartford's ordinance requiring EV chargers in parking lots with at least 35 states. So you can see where that authority comes from, see an example of it happening here in Connecticut, and know that there's a clear path for communities to pursue EV access in new developments. And that's true for the other green light actions as well. The path is clear. There may be more of an uphill battle when we get to the yellow light actions. In the clean energy, local generation, delivery, and purchasing category, one possible action is to purchase utility-owned streetlights. So Acadia Center asked whether municipalities can buy their streetlights from the utility, and that's typically done to facilitate cost and energy-saving upgrades like LED lights. Looking back at the regional matrix, we'll see that there's a clear yes in Maine, Massachusetts, New York, and Rhode Island, but that the answer is less straightforward in Connecticut. And the details on that are that Eversource does have a well-established policy for selling streetlights to municipalities, but there's no requirement that they do so. So there are no guarantees. This is an action that may be very straightforward for your community, or it may invite a little bit of pushback. When we get to the red light actions, you should expect pushback and be ready to engage in advocacy. Looking at the buildings category, one possible action is to require new construction to be electric vehicle ready. The action guide explains that Acadia Center asked whether state rules allow cities and towns to require building code provisions, like wiring requirements, for example, that make it easier, more efficient, and more affordable to install EV charging infrastructure in new or renovated buildings. This is an option that our neighbors in New York and Vermont have, but it's not part of Connecticut's building code, even though Connecticut statute does require it. And municipalities are not allowed to adopt more stringent regulations than those in the building code. So this red light and all of the red light actions signal opportunities for state-level advocacy. That's how the document works for all 37 community energy actions outlined and detailed in the action guide. You walk through the status and the considerations for each action, and you'll find that even if a particular action is prohibited in your state, you can see where and how it has been accomplished. That makes the action guide a strong combination of accurate, actionable information and some really good inspiration for advocacy. Acadia Center looks forward to collaborating with communities in Connecticut I'm happy to be a resource on the action guide, and Bill and the Connecticut team are a great resource for the work itself. So Bill's contact information is here, and I'm going to hand it back over to him for the next bit.
Thanks, Kath. So Acadia Center hopes that the action guide can demonstrate how crucial it is to align community action with state level reforms. By combining the regional context for community energy actions and the state-specific information for moving forward, the action guide will help raise awareness of which actions can be taken now and build support for updating the rules and processes that govern the energy system. The action guide may also spark a little friendly competition, we hope, between states as community energy advocates realize that their neighbors may have a different slate of available options. And Acadia Center's plans for the action guide include widespread distribution to community and state level stakeholders in the region, state-specific webinars like this one to introduce users to the resource, and outreach to spark coalition work on state level reforms that will benefit communities. We very much look forward to collaborating with all of you, and thanks again for joining us today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill and Kathleen. At this point, we do have some additional time for any questions you may have. We would ask that you put those into the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And we can give it a moment. Okay, I have one question here, which is how does Connecticut stack up across the board?
I'll take the first stab at that one. The regional matrix does a good job of capturing where Connecticut state rules are allowing for community action and also where there's room for improvement. So you can see that there are some places where change in the state laws and state level advocacy could be really helpful, but there are also plenty of areas where you could move ahead with actions that are already permitted. So it's, you know, this is true for all of the states really, that there's a mixed bag. So there's something to tackle today, and there's something to make a longer term plan for changing what's possible.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. We have another question. Can we expect updates as state policies change? Updates to the guide.
Yeah, that's another good question. Whenever you put something like this together, the fear is always that it's out of date before you even have a chance to present it. I can tell you that's not true yet, but I'm sure things will continue to change. It's really a function of how interested and motivated communities are in expanding their options right now, that a lot of these things are changing quickly. So I don't have a clear answer for you about when you could expect updates, but I can tell you that Acadia Center will be tracking changes and really hoping that updates are necessary soon.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen. Next question is, were municipal-owned utility policies also analyzed in this research?
You know, we looked a little bit at municipally owned utilities, but we didn't get really far into the specific policies. We looked particularly at whether municipalization was an option, and it is in Connecticut, whether microgrids were available to communities who are interested. That one is a yellow light in Connecticut and very mixed across the region. And then we also looked a little bit at municipal district energy systems, and that's more of a green light across the board, or almost across the board, but we didn't dig any deeper than those high level policies.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Another question. How does Acadia Center see the action guide being used in Connecticut?
That is largely up to you. We are really excited to put this information together and to be a resource, but we want to be clear that we're not the only ones to answer this question, and we're anticipating that individuals and groups will team up with each other, with Acadia Center. There may be coalitions that emerge around particular issues that are really interesting to Connecticut or to particular communities in Connecticut. And there may be uses for the action guide that we haven't considered yet. So we're really eager to hear from you, to hear from folks who are rooted in communities and in Connecticut and across the Northeast, and thinking about what you need to move forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Kathleen. Oh, another question's come in. Do you anticipate opportunities to use the guide as they engage in the new Sustainable Connecticut program? That might be a Bill question.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bill, do you want to speak to Sustainable Connecticut and how that might work?
Sure. So I think first our hope is that this will be useful to Sustainable CT and their really excellent work. And I'm excited to see that they've announced the launch, and that there's already very strong interest amongst communities in participating. And I know that Lynn Stoddard at Sustainable CT actually was one of the individuals who helped advise us on the action guide as a peer reviewer, and that she is looking to list the action guide as a resource on the Sustainable CT website. And that, I don't want to foreclose any possibilities, because I'm hopeful that this will be something that can be used by communities as a resource, by Sustainable CT as a resource, and then maybe new work will grow out of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. All right. We have some thank yous coming in, which is great to hear. So if there are any additional questions, feel free to keep typing them in. We've gone through all we have for now. I just wanted to say thanks again. And this webinar will go up on YouTube. So please feel free to share it with anyone who might not have been able to make it today, and also continue to share the action guide. We're excited to be able to present it to you, but we're hoping this is just the beginning of working with you all. And with that, I think it looks like we're good to go. So thank you again, and hope you all have a good evening.